They don't tell you the last time is the last time. The last time your child leans into your side. The last time your name feels safe in their mouth. The last time love doesn't come with conditions. You don't know it while it's happening. You only recognize it years later, when the house gets too quiet, and you realize the silence didn't start today. It started a long time ago. I used to believe motherhood was permanent. Not the job, not the title, the belonging. I thought once someone comes into this world through you, they're tethered forever. That no matter how far life pulls them, there's an invisible string that never snaps. Turns out, strings can rot quietly. You just don't hear it break. When my son was little, the house never rested. There was always noise, doors slamming, feet running, laughter spilling into corners it didn't belong. The kind of noise that makes you tired but alive. I used to complain about it. I'd stand in the kitchen, hands in soapy water, and think, God, just 5 minutes of quiet. Funny, what you beg for when you don't know the cost. Back then, mornings started early. He'd wake before the sun, padding down the hallway in mismatched socks, dragging his blanket behind him like a tail. He'd crawl into my lap while I drank my first coffee, still half asleep, his head heavy against my chest. No words, no requests, just presence. That kind of trust does something to you. It carves a permanent space inside your body. I used to think that space could never be emptied. His birthdays were my favorite. Not because of the parties, but because of the anticipation. The weeks leading up to them, the planning, the way he'd change his mind 10 times about what he wanted. One year it was pirates, the next astronauts, then dinosaurs, then cowboys. Themes changed. The excitement didn't. I didn't buy fancy decorations. I couldn't afford to. I made things. Paper banners, hand-cut shapes, cakes that leaned a little to one side because the oven ran hot. He never cared. He'd look at me like I'd built the whole world just for him. And for a while, I had. There was a year money was so tight it scared me. His father had just lost his job. We were counting groceries, measuring gas, stretching dollars thinner than they wanted to go. That year he wanted a space party. I almost said no. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, holding the bills, doing the math over and over, like the answer might change if I stared hard enough. But then I looked down the hallway and saw him on the floor, lining up toy rockets, narrating a whole universe to himself. So I stayed up all night. I made planets out of paper match, hung them from the ceiling with fishing line so they looked like they were floating. I dusted the cake with silver sprinkles and used marshmallows for meteors. When he walked in the next morning, his mouth fell open. He ran straight into me and wrapped his arms around my waist so hard I almost tipped over. "Best mom in the universe," he said, cheeks full of cake. That sentence lived in my bones for years. People don't talk enough about how grief can arrive early, how it can show up while the person is still alive. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't kick the door in. It just starts replacing things slowly. Hugs turn into pats. Conversations turn into updates. Visits turn into obligations. And you tell yourself it's normal. You tell yourself this is just how life goes. When he became a teenager, he got louder but farther. Doors closed harder. Music got louder. Words got shorter. Still, he came to me when it mattered, when he failed his driving test, when his heart got broken for the first time, when he didn't know who he was supposed to be yet. I was still his landing place, even when he pretended he didn't need one. Then he left, college first, then a job, then a life that didn't include stopping by just because. At first, I understood. I told myself independence was healthy. Distance was normal. I said all the right things out loud. Inside, something started to ache. The phone calls changed. They became less about stories and more about logistics. Less guess what happened today. More hey, quick question. I didn't notice it right away. Most people don't. You don't wake up one day unloved. You wake up useful. The first time he asked for money, I didn't hesitate. Of course, I helped. That's what parents do. The second time, I didn't question it either. The third time, I told myself it was temporary. By the fifth time, I stopped keeping track. I didn't want to know what it added up to. I just wanted to believe it meant something. Love makes you generous in dangerous ways. It convinces you that sacrifice equals connection. That if you keep giving, you'll keep your place. I thought love was service. I didn't realize service can quietly replace love. His wife came into the picture around that time. She was polite, efficient, always busy. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself not everyone loves loudly, but there was a shift. Suddenly, visits were scheduled, conversations were filtered, and I became mom only when something was needed. The grandchildren arrived. I thought that would bring us back together. It didn't. It just added another layer of distance I wasn't allowed to cross freely. I remember the first holiday I spent alone, without explanation. No argument, no fight. Just a casual. This year's complicated. Everything after that felt like borrowed time. Looking back now, I can see the pattern clearly. But when you're inside it, you keep hoping the warmth will return. You keep believing the past has momentum. It doesn't. By the time the birthday phone call happened, the one sentence that finally said out loud what had been building for years, the loss wasn't new. It was just finally honest. And that's where this story truly begins. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with the slow realization that love, when left unattended, doesn't always survive. Sometimes it just fades, quietly, while you're still holding the door open. There's a moment you don't notice at first. The moment love stops being something you share and starts becoming something you provide. No one announces it. No one asks your permission. It just happens quietly, like dust settling on furniture you stopped using. At first, the calls still sounded normal. Hey, Mom, how are you? That question used to mean something. It used to open doors. Stories. Long pauses filled with comfort. Now it was just a warm-up, a courtesy line before the real reason. I'd answer honestly at first. I'd talk about the weather, the ache in my knees, the neighbor's dog barking too early in the morning. He'd listen for a minute, then the shift. So listen, quick thing. I hate to ask, but, and just like that, my life would fade into the background. The first big request came after his wedding. New house, unexpected repairs, short on cash. I remember standing in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the fridge covered in old photos. I didn't even check my balance. I said yes before he finished explaining, because that's what mothers do, or at least, that's what I thought mothers were supposed to do. After that, it became easier for him to ask, and harder for me to tell the difference between need and habit. There was always a reason, an emergency, a tight month, a delay that wasn't his fault. I believed every word. Not because they were all true, but because I wanted them to be. I started noticing patterns. Calls came faster near the end of the month. Texts arrived late at night, when saying no would feel cruel. Messages were warmer when money moved quickly, colder when it didn't. I didn't confront it. I told myself I was being cynical. Love makes excuses for people, especially the ones you raised. I kept a notebook in the side drawer. Nothing official, just a spiral-bound thing I bought at the grocery store. At first, it wasn't about money. It was about memory. I started writing things down, because I was afraid I was disappearing from my own story. Helped with car repair, covered part of rent, paid for medical bill. No dates at first, no totals, just proof that I had been there, that I hadn't imagined my usefulness. Years passed that way. Requests became smoother, more confident. Sometimes he didn't even ask anymore. Can you just send it like last time? Like last time. As if this had always been the arrangement. His wife rarely spoke to me directly at first. When she did, her voice had a practiced politeness, efficient, neutral. She'd call when something needed handling. Insurance, school fees, a short-term gap. She never asked how I was. She never needed to. I started feeling it in my body before I admitted it in my mind. That tightness in the chest when the phone rang. That hesitation before answering. That strange mix of hope and dread. Hope that maybe, just once, the call would be about me. Dread that it never was. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the way gratitude slowly vanished. At first, there were thank yous, then acknowledgments, then nothing. Money would leave my account, and silence would follow. Weeks sometimes, until the next need. I told myself this was just adulthood, that relationships change, that I shouldn't expect affection in return for help. But something felt off. I wasn't being loved differently. I was being accessed. I remember one holiday in particular. I'd cooked all morning. Food I knew he liked. Recipes I'd memorized decades ago. They arrived late. They stayed briefly. They left early. He hugged me with one arm while checking his phone, and his wife whispered in the kitchen, "We're running behind." Behind what? I wondered. Me. When they left, I stood at the sink washing dishes that barely got used. That's when it hit me. I was no longer part of their life. I was a pit stop. The requests didn't stop when my husband died. If anything, they increased. I thought grief would soften them. It didn't. It made me more convenient. I didn't hear. "How are you holding up?" I heard. "Do you still have access to that account?" I didn't hear. "Do you need help?" I heard. "Can you manage this one thing?" Grief teaches you a lot. One of the hardest lessons is learning who sees your pain and who sees opportunity. At some point, I realized I had become predictable, always available, always agreeable, always solvent. I was no longer asked, I was expected. The notebook filled up slowly, loan after loan, transfer after transfer. I didn't add it up. I was afraid of the number, afraid that seeing it clearly would force me to admit what I already felt. Birthdays passed quietly. Mine, especially, a text, sometimes late, no calls, no visits. But when their birthdays came around, there were reminders, hints, expectations. That's when the word family started to feel hollow. Family doesn't treat you like a resource. Family doesn't only remember you when something breaks. The truth was hard to accept. I wasn't being helped into relevance. I was being managed, and still I stayed, because leaving emotionally felt worse than being used, because being needed felt safer than being forgotten, because I didn't know who I was without the role they gave me. Until the day the birthday phone call finally stripped everything bare. One sentence, no apology, no explanation, just confirmation of what had already been happening for years. They didn't stop celebrating with me that day. They stopped seeing me a long time ago. And something inside me, something tired, something old, something honest finally stopped pretending. There's a strange moment when exhaustion turns into calm. Not relief, not happiness, just a quiet, steady knowing that you can't keep doing this to yourself. For me, it didn't arrive with anger. It arrived with paperwork. The morning after that birthday call, I woke up early, too early, The house was still dark, the kind of dark that feels heavy rather than peaceful. I lay there listening to the refrigerator hum, the clock tick, the small sounds that prove a house is still alive even when the people inside feel invisible. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I'd imagined if this ever happened, I'd fall apart, that I'd sob into my pillow, that grief would knock the breath out of me. Instead, I felt organized, like something in me had lined itself up quietly overnight. I made coffee black no sugar. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the drawer where I kept the notebook, the one I never meant anyone to see. I finally added the numbers. I went back through every page, every quiet yes, every don't worry about it, every we'll figure it out later. Car repairs, mortgage bridges, school deposits, medical bills, trips I never took so they could take theirs. The total sat there on the page, plain and undeniable. It wasn't the amount that hurt. It was the realization that none of it had bought closeness. Not one dinner, not one honest conversation, not one place at the table. That's when the cold truth settled in. If money were love, I would have been cherished. I put on my coat and walked to the bank. It was a short walk, 3 blocks. I'd done it 1,000 times. The air was sharp, early fall. That kind of weather that makes you aware of your joints and your age. Inside, the bank smelled like disinfectant and paper. Too clean, too quiet. The young teller recognized me. She always did. Polite, efficient, kind in a distant way. How can I help you today? I didn't hesitate. I need to cancel all automatic transfers. Her fingers paused above the keyboard. All of them? She asked gently. Yes. She glanced at the screen. There are a few scheduled for your son's account. I know. My voice didn't shake. Please cancel them. She nodded, didn't question further, just did her job. Then she asked, almost as an afterthought, would you like to update your account security? I thought of how easily my name had been used. Yes, I said, I would. When I walked out, I felt something unexpected, not guilt, relief, like I'd been holding my breath for years without realizing it. The phone rang that evening. Not my son, his wife. She never liked speaking to me unless she had to. Her voice didn't bother with pleasantries. Hey, did something go wrong with the transfer? No concern, no curiosity, just inconvenience. No, I said. Nothing went wrong. Silence. Then, carefully, we were just surprised. I imagine you were. Another pause. Things are tight right now. I'm sure they are, I replied. Then I said the sentence that changed everything. I've decided I won't be funding grown adults anymore. The line went quiet. Then she exhaled sharply. Is this about the birthday? No, I said, and that was the truth. This is about boundaries. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. You appreciate my money. I said evenly. Not my presence. She started to respond. I didn't wait. I hung up that night. I stood by the window and watched the porch light flicker on across the street. A family laughed over dinner. The sound floated through the open window like something warm and unreachable. I used to think my love could hold us together. But love doesn't work if only one person is holding on. The next morning, I opened the folder I hadn't touched in years, the one labeled property and essentials. Inside was the deed to the house I'd lived in for decades, the house that held every version of me, the chipped tile near the fridge, the scratch on the living room floor from a science fair project gone wrong, the bedroom where I nursed my husband through his final months. They'd mentioned the house before, casually, just thinking ahead. Wouldn't it be easier for your safety? I'd nodded. I wouldn't nod now. I placed the folder on the table and wrote a note. Simple. Clear. This house is not up for negotiation. I folded it and slid it inside the deed. Then I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. His office smelled like paper and old coffee. He didn't rush me, didn't question my clarity. I told him exactly what I wanted. Full control while I'm alive. No access without my consent. Changes to beneficiaries. He listened. He respected it. That mattered more than I expected. When I walked home, I stopped at a bakery. I bought myself a small tart. I hadn't done that in years. I sat on a bench and ate it slowly. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about who needed me. That night, my son called. His voice was tight. We need to talk. I'm sure we do, I thought. He was angry, controlled, careful. You changed things without telling us. To you, I corrected. There was silence. This is ridiculous, he said. No, I replied. It's overdue. He didn't understand. Or maybe he didn't want to. You're acting like a stranger, he snapped. I laughed then. Not because it was funny, because it was true. I've been a stranger to you for years, I said. You just didn't notice. When the call ended, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, but the good kind of tired, the kind that comes after you finally stop running in place. That night, I slept, really slept, and when I woke up, I knew something irreversible had happened. I had stopped paying to be loved. People don't panic when they lose you emotionally. They panic when they lose access. That's the part no one admits out loud. After I froze the accounts and adjusted the paperwork, the silence didn't last long. It never does. Silence is uncomfortable for people who are used to taking. The first visit came without warning. I saw his car pull up too fast, tires scraping the curb like he'd been driving angry. He didn't text. He didn't call. He just showed up, like he always used to. I didn't open the door right away. That felt important. For the first time, I let him stand on the porch and knocked Dot twice. When I finally opened it, he looked older than I remembered. Dot, tired, frustrated, like a man whose expectations had been interrupted. "We need to talk," he said, already stepping inside. I didn't offer him coffee. I didn't ask how he was. I just sat in my chair by the window and waited. He paced. He always paced when he wanted control. "You can't just cut us off," he said. "That's not how family works." I watched him walk back and forth across the living room, the same room where he once dragged a cardboard volcano across the floor, leaving that long scratch I never fixed. "This didn't happen overnight," I said calmly. He stopped. "Yes, it did. You snapped." I shook my head. "No, you stopped noticing." He tried reason first. He talked about stress, about responsibilities, about how hard life is, as if I hadn't lived it. Then he tried guilt. "You're hurting people," he said. "The kids don't understand why you're acting like this." "I'm not acting," I replied. "I'm responding." When guilt didn't work, he reached for something sharper. "You're confused," he said carefully. "This isn't like you." That sentence landed harder than the rest, because it wasn't concern. It was a strategy. "You mean the version of me that never said no," I said. He didn't answer. The next call came from my granddaughter. She arrived with irritation, wrapped in youth, confidence sharpened by not yet knowing what life takes from you. She didn't sit at first. She stood in my kitchen, arms crossed, eyes flashing with frustration. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. I poured tea. "Doing what?" "Cutting everyone off, making everything complicated." "I'm making things honest," I said. She scoffed. "That sounds like something you read online." "It's something I lived," I replied. She accused me of being selfish. I let her, because sometimes people need to say ugly things before they hear truth. "I've been selfless my entire adult life," I said quietly. "This isn't cruelty, it's balance." She didn't understand. I didn't expect her to. She left without a hug, without a goodbye. The door closed softly behind her, and I didn't chase it. That surprised me too. The pressure didn't stop. It shifted. It became quieter, more manipulative. His wife came next. She didn't knock. She stood in my kitchen like the space didn't belong to me. "You're tearing the family apart," she said. I met her eyes. "No," I said. I stopped holding it together by myself. She talked about fairness, about how much they'd done for me, about all the times they included me. I didn't interrupt. I let the lies finish forming. Then I said, "You don't get to rewrite history just because it's inconvenient." She left angry, but unsure. That mattered. What they didn't expect was the quiet ally, my grandson. He came without an agenda, without demands. He brought bread from the bakery and sat at my table like he belonged there. "You're not wrong," he said finally. Those 4 words loosened something in my chest I didn't realize was clenched. They talk about you like you're a chore, he added softly. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He saw me. That scared them more than my boundaries. Because once someone else sees the truth, it spreads. My son came back one last time. This time, he didn't yell. He looked defeated. What do you want from me? He asked. I thought about it carefully. Nothing, I said. That's the point. He didn't understand. People who take don't understand being released. When he left, the house felt different. Not emptier, clearer, like a room after smoke clears. That night, I realized something crucial. They weren't mourning me. They were mourning the version of me that made their lives easier. And I was done resurrecting her. I sat alone on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the night settle. The world hadn't ended. The sky hadn't fallen. I was still here, breathing whole. That's when it became official. Not on paper, not at the bank. Inside me, I was no longer available for guilt. There's a strange peace that comes after you stop explaining yourself. Not relief, not happiness, just the absence of tension. Like your shoulders finally drop after years of holding them too high. The mornings changed first. I started waking up without dread. No flinch when the phone buzzed. No quick mental math about who might need what. Just light through the curtains. The hum of the house. My own breathing. I made tea slowly. Measured the leaves, waited for the water to boil instead of rushing it. I sat at the table like I had nowhere else to be, because I didn't. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. I went for walks again. Nothing ambitious, just around the block. My cane tapped against the pavement in a steady rhythm. Trees held on to their last colors, burnt gold, stubborn red. I passed houses full of noise, laughter spilling through windows, children shouting without fear of being too loud. Once, that would have hurt. Now, it didn't. It reminded me that life continues in many forms. Not all of them need me inside them to be real. The house stopped feeling like a waiting room. I rearranged things, moved the chair closer to the window, cleared out drawers I'd been afraid to open. I found old notes, grocery lists, reminders, a receipt folded small from a diner we used to go to every Sunday. I didn't rush through the memories. I let them sit. I stopped asking what I could have done differently. Some things don't change no matter how kind you are. The first real laughter came unexpectedly. I was trimming the roses one afternoon carefully, the way my husband taught me. Cut at an angle. Respect the stem. I caught my reflection in the window. Dirt on my hands, hair undone, face calm, and I laughed. Not because something was funny, because I felt like myself again. My grandson came by often, never announced, never with a reason. He brought bread sometimes. Once, a plant he thought I'd like. We sat in silence easily. That's how you know something is real. One afternoon, he said, "You seem lighter." "I am," I replied. He nodded like that made sense. I didn't hear from my son for weeks, then months, and something surprising happened. I didn't ache. I missed him, yes, but I didn't miss the version of myself I had to become to keep him close. That woman was exhausted. She deserved rest. One evening, I wrote him a letter, not out of anger, out of completion. I didn't accuse. I didn't list. I didn't beg. I wrote the truth plainly. That love isn't something you extract. That silence isn't peace when it's forced. That I stopped disappearing. I sealed the envelope. And then I set it down .unsent because I realized something important. Sometimes the power isn't in being heard. It's in knowing you spoke. I went places alone. A cafe I'd always passed but never entered. I ordered lemon loaf and black coffee. Sat by the window watching people pass. No one looked at me strangely. No one pitied me. I was just another woman choosing her afternoon, and that felt revolutionary. I went to the theater alone, sat close to the front, clapped until my hands stung, not just for the actors, for myself, for showing up. At night, I slept without rehearsing conversations that would never happen. No imagined apologies, no future explanations, just sleep. Deep and deserved. One morning, my grandson asked quietly, "Do you miss them?" "Yes," I said. "Would you go back?" I thought carefully. "Not to how it was." He nodded. That was enough. The house holds me now. Not as a burden, not as a resource, as a woman who stayed. The chipped mug, the ticking clock, the quiet I no longer fear. They shut their door on me. That much is true. But I opened one for myself, and what I found wasn't bitterness. It was space. It was calm. It was me. So if you're listening to this, and something in your chest feels tight, if you've been shrinking to stay loved, if you've been paying for belonging, hear this. You're not selfish. You're allowed to come back to yourself. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stop knocking on doors that stay closed and sit down inside the life that's still yours.